the caste system consists of a hierarchy. There are 4 levels or castes arranged one over the other, and there is one section which is outside this hierarchy. The topmost position is occupied by the Brahmins, the next level by Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and the Shudras. These people are known as untouchables or Harijans. In India, if you see, we have different regions, we have different states, and this hierarchy or the placement of the castes over one another differs from one another. For example, in village 1, perhaps the Vaishyas occupy a position above the Kshatriyas. But all over India, it can be seen that the Brahmins occupy the topmost position because of their ritual privilege, and the Shudras occupy the lowest position, and of course the untouchables outside this hierarchy. Now, what is dominant caste? In this hierarchy, or according to this hierarchy, which is an ideal type of the caste system, we can see that the Brahmins are at the top. But what about other castes? Do they get a chance to occupy this position? This problem or confusion was explored by M.N. Srinivas, and he observed that in some places, in some villages, there was something known as a dominant caste, where there was an exchange of levels, there was an exchange of the places in the hierarchy, and it was observed that some of the land owning castes, they had climbed this ladder of hierarchy and they were known as the dominant castes because of their economic and political power which came with land owning. They started occupying a higher place in the local hierarchy. Why? Because they started influencing the people in economy, in politics. Why in economy? Because they started giving jobs to those who belonged to the lowest castes. So people started looking up to them. They also started influencing the culture. So the people who were below these dominant castes, they started imitating the people of the dominant castes. They started imitating their lifestyles, their food habits, their marriage practices and other forms of culture. Here we can see that even numerical strength was important, and of course because there were many people who owned lands, they were enjoying a large numerical strength. They were strong numerically. So we can summarize the characteristics of dominant caste as those who enjoyed economic and political power, who had a high rank in the local hierarchy. Please note the term local hierarchy. And the third one was numerical strength. Now, if you try to study the dominant caste, you would observe that in the north, the land owning castes like the Jats, they became a dominant caste. So when they rose up, they started demanding certain privileges, especially after the independence, after coming of democracy. Therefore, we can see that this dominant caste or the peasant caste started demanding rights, political rights, economic rights at the national level. They were no longer satisfied with their place in the local hierarchy. They wanted something more. That is why we see a number of protests every now and then, especially by the peasant castes, because now they had climbed the ladder of this hierarchy. So they were occupying perhaps the topmost position in that particular village. Now you would say that if there is a dominant caste, then what happens to the status of the Brahmins? Please understand that Brahmins occupy the highest level ritually because of their ritual privilege. So, whenever there is another dominant caste, the Brahmins, although they are at a level which is lower in the secular hierarchy, but ritually they will always occupy a greater position, because rituals are an important part of the people of India. Now, Sanskritization is a concept which M.N. Srinivas brought in along with dominant caste. He said that in any hierarchy, mainly the local hierarchy, the people who belong to the lower castes, sometimes they were tribals, semi-tribals, they tried to imitate the practices of the higher castes, and these higher castes were mainly the Dvija. Who are the Dvija? The Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, who are known as the twice born, who wear the thread, sacred thread we can call it. So, who are the Dvijas? The Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and they provide a model of imitation. So, what is imitated? Just like the dominant caste, the rituals, the lifestyles, the fooding habits, the marriage. Sometimes some people will stop eating non-veg, they will stop taking alcohol because they want to be a part of the higher level of the hierarchy. Now, whenever someone imitates, or a group of people, they imitate the people of the hierarchy at the higher level, it does not mean that automatically they become a part of the higher caste. No, it takes few generations. So, a lot of perseverance is required, a lot of patience is required for this Sanskritization to take place, or this social mobility to take place. Now, there is an interesting concept. In some places, the Brahmins, when they live in a tribal dominated area, what happens here? How is the mobility observed? Here it will be interesting to notice that the Brahmins start imitating the tribals, and it is known as tribalization, or the Brahmins, they go native, means they behave like the native dwellers. But understand that this is only temporary. The Brahmins could be living at that locality, at that village for a small amount of time, and when that period is over, they perform all the rituals in order to purify themselves. But as long as they live in that locality, in that community, in that village, they opt for the practices adopted by the tribals, and this phenomena is known as tribalization. So, whenever you are studying dominant caste, understand that when people ascend the ladder of hierarchy, it is known as Sanskritization, and when the Brahmins are living in a tribal dominated area, then they try to imitate the tribals, and this phenomena is known as tribalization. So, I hope that this concept of dominant caste you can understand easily and you can connect it with Sanskritization as well as tribalization. Once more, the land owning peasant castes, they were the dominant castes. These people also, examples you can give, Jats, and they are large farmers who come to the forefront in different types of protests, and according to history, the Jats belong to the lowest level and they gradually climb the ladder up, and today they are requesting or they are aiming to be identified with the Vaishyas. The struggle goes on. Happy learning. All the best.